Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome to tutorial 01 of my coding series for 5M scripts. So now, what we're going to start with is we're going to make the folder. So all scripts basically are in folders for 5M. So we'll start right now with we'll name it first command because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to make a command. So now what we need to do is make the files. So basically you want to make these three files. Well, actually, only two. We're only going to do two today. Resource.lua. It needs to have two underscores in the beginning. It's just how they do it. And then we need to make another one. This one's going to be called server.lua. Yes. Alright, and now we have this created. So now we want to go here and we want to open it up. It's right here, resource.lua, and then the server.lua. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is set up the resource.lua. So what you want to do is you actually want to go to a 5M documentation, because for most scripts you're going to need the manifest version, so you could use some of the functions from a citizen. So you're going to take this, and then you're going to go over here, you're going to just paste that right there, and then I'll put a link in the description how to get there, and then you need to label the scripts. So basically, for a server script, you need to label it. So it reads it this way, so then you do that, and then you label it. So technically you could name that anything you want. Most people just name it server.lua, or they like name the client one client.lua, but you could really name it technically anything and just have it here so it can read the file eventually. But what you first want to do now for the command part of this is you want to register command, and now this is going to be the command name, so we'll just put it as Discord, and then we'll put source raw command, no, args raw command. But you need to have this in a function, as I'm just remembering now. Okay, so now that's created, and then end it, because that's how you end in Lua. So now that's the Discord command. This is case sensitive too, so it'll have to be typed like that. Like if you put a capital D for the Discord, it will be it won't actually work. But nonetheless, so this will be /discord, and that's just gonna send a message to the user. So the things here are the source. The source is like the person who sent the message. So whoever runs /discord, that's the person who is gonna like get this function's like return. It'll get like whatever it does. So like if you send a message back, it'll get that. But you could also send a message to everybody, but I'll go into that in a second. And then args, basically this stands for arguments. So like if you were to type, let's say /discord, but then like put a 1 and then like a 2. So technically in code actually 1 is technically a 0, but actually for Lua, oddly enough, is they start at 1. So actually, this is arg1. So it'd be like if you wanted to access this, it'd be args. If I could type args1, that's accessing 1 right here, because that's the next one. It basically like splits it up by spaces, and that's how args works, because it's arguments. And then 2 would just be args2, because arguments is an array that like 5M returns back when a command is ran. So like if you just run /discord, there's no arguments, so arguments will basically be nil or empty. So there's no point in then getting that. But it's very good for like if you want to make commands like with sub like commands in it. So like if you want to do like set admin whatever, and then have like the user ID after that or something, that's when you would use an argument. But otherwise, you don't really have to worry about that for right now, because we're not going to do anything with that. And then raw command is just literally the raw command. So it would actually, for this one, it would bring back /discord, because like just /discord with the slash in it. So that's what it's returning. Because right up here, you see how it just has Discord? It already interprets the slash being ran for commands, so you don't have to worry about that. But if in case you ever wanted the raw command, it's right there and it brings it back, so it would bring back the slash. So if you really wanted to read it that way, you could, but there's really no point considering arguments gets returned here, and you already know the command being ran, because this won't get triggered unless this is ran /discord. So yeah, but now we want to send a message to the client. Sometimes my keyboard does that. Um, but now we want to send a message to the client. So what we want to do is actually trigger client event, and then you want to do chat message. And then this is going to be confusing a little bit, but I'll explain what this is now in a second. Okay, so this is our message right here. Our message. You don't have to put that. But trigger client event. So the first argument in this is a chat message right here. This is chat message. So what this argument is, because I'm going to call these arguments, basically everything here is an argument, or I guess you could call it by its real term, parameter. So like the first parameter, second parameter, and then the third parameter. So basically that's how in code you usually talk about things like in functions and stuff like that when you call them parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3. But chat message is our first parameter. So what that is doing is it's letting basically the function know that we want to have a chat message be sent. Like we want to have a chat message in chat. Then the second parameter is who's it to. Now this confused me for a long time actually. So it's like you'll use this a lot. Whenever you run a client event from the server, you always have to have this parameter here. Basically this parameter is like describing who's it going to. So you can have two choices here. You can have a source, which a source is just literally a player ID. That's really all it is. So a source is where it's going. So source would be our source up here, which is what it's referring to. So it would send it to the player. But now see, if you put -1, this means that the chat message goes to everyone. So this would be good for like an announcement plugin, like if like an announcement script, I mean. If you wanted to announce it like something to everyone, you can make like a /announce command, and then -1 is what you'd want to use for that parameter because it would send it in the chat and everyone would see that. But for right now, we're just going to use source because we just want to send it to ourselves. We don't want someone running /discord and sending it to everybody. And then this is just our message. This is literally the message that gets sent. You could use color codes here too, like these, and then like this. I forget the color code, so I don't know how this is gonna look. It's probably gonna come out rainbows, but nevertheless. I know one's red though, but so that's gonna send now a message to ourselves. Well, that's not really advanced though, right? So like we want to get into more advanced things, right? We want to have more arguments, right? So then we could just register another command, easy, right? Now we know how to do it. Source args raw command. You always have to have that end thing in Lua, so you have to do that for every script basically. Whenever you register a command or like whenever you do a function, the function always has to have an ending thing right there. So now we have that. Now the command, I guess we'll name it, let's say announce, I guess we could do maybe, and then have the arguments, whatever. Okay, so now we have the announce command registered. Now basically what we want to do is how do we get what's after it? So for instance, /announce, this is our announcement. So now we want to get all these args though, and we want to put it into a message, right? So how do we do that is the question. Well, basically, like I said, arguments is an array. So what we can do with an array, to think of what an array is, to make it more simpler, is array is just a list basically. So array is just like the complex term that most people call it, most programmers call that an array, but you can literally call it a list because that's what it is. So it's basically just things in a list that you can access, and each one's an individual element basically. So this would be one element, then is one element too, our is another element, and then announcement's the next element. So it's basically just a list with elements in it. That's really all it is. They could be strings, they could be integers, they could be number, they could be anything, but that's what an array is. So now we're going to want to take the arguments and put it into a string so we can announce it. So basically what we want to do here now So we want to have a string. So basically local, this basically means that the variable is local to the function, so it stays in here. If you were to do something like this, that makes it a global, which means you could access it anywhere. You really shouldn't be doing this unless it's really for a use, like unless you have a need for it. Like if you were to make, like, let's say, is allowed to drive or something, a car. Now that's defined outside the scope of the function and like register command, but it's a global, and whenever you like declare it without a local, it means it's a global, and it can be basically called anywhere and it'll always be there. So we don't want to do this because technically that's not good practice to have that as a global variable. So we just want to have it as a local one. So it's just local to the function, and we could reuse this variable name wherever we wanted to if we had to. So now we have local string. Basically, we're just going to make the string for the announcement. So now what we want to do is we want to do this. So I equals 1. And we want to do for args do. So this is basically a for loop, but what this is going to do is this is going to make our string so we can have the announcement. So now with this is you want to add this to the string. So then you want to do args, and then you want to do I. And the reason why you do I and why you do this is basically concatenation. So basically this adds it to the string, but like not adding like numbers, it adds the string to another string. So it basically adds it onto it. What you also want to do though here too is you also want to have a space, because technically every argument is spaced. If you see here, it's all spaced. But the thing is with code is like these spaces are not being returned because it only captures the words as the elements. So the arguments is only going to have the words. So these spaces are going to be left out. So we have to add it ourselves. Okay, so now this will add a space to the string every time it goes around the for loop. And then it'll add also this at the after the space. So then we're going to have this come back. This is our announcement. And then each element will basically go through, and it'll have like this, and then the next element, you know, I equals 2, is coming back, and it's going to have the space, and then it's going to have is. So that's basically what that for loop does. You're going to use for loops a lot because they're very useful, and it's very quick to do, especially with all code. It's really used a lot, so that's something you should really take note of and make sure you know that. But that's really the syntax for hashtag args, or I guess whatever, the pound sign, I guess you could call it, pound args. Basically what this is claiming right here is what's the length of args. So basically you're going I equals 1 to the length of args. So arguments, you're going to the length of arguments. You want to go till you hit it. So it'll go through all of these. It'll go through, this is our announcement. It'll go through all of that within the arguments array. So that basically just is declaring where it's going to. Because when you do for loops, you could also do something like this. And then basically this is just, I mean, you could probably guess what this is doing. It's just going from 1 to 10. That's really all it's doing. So basically calling pound sign args is basically just going 1 to whatever the length of arguments is. So you could have tons of text here, you know, and then like it'll keep going until it reaches the end of that. But yeah, so make sure you make note of for loops. That's really all you have to do for that. So now we have our string because we just attached it all together. So now we want to announce it to everybody, right? So now we want to do trigger client event once again. Chat message. Gotta know the function we're calling. But now we don't want to do source. You see, we don't want to do source. We want to do -1. The reason being is because -1 is going to announce it to everybody. -1 is basically like telling the function, because trigger client event is basically a function. It's telling that function, I want everybody to get this. So now then it's going to print out the message. It's going to print it to everybody. It's going to basically run this, but for everybody. Essentially, that's really what it's doing. It's going to run this and everyone gets the message. So now we want to print string because that's the announcement. And then trigger client event, chat message, -1, string. So now it's going to bring back our string, which is the announcement. So server.cfg, we just want to edit this, so we want to start it. So what did we name it? We named it first command. So you always want to do this, start first command. You always want to have it started in your server.cfg. Now also what we need to do is move it over. So we want to have it in here. So first command, I usually put in the scripts like I said. The only problem is I don't want this to move it. I actually wanted to copy it because if we have to make changes. So now we paste it there. So now first command is there. So I already have the server up too. So now we can just run this basically. But now we go into 5M. And you shouldn't really do this. It's not good practice. But I'm going to refresh it. And I'm going to basically... Oh, I can't do that in game. I forgot. I don't have perms. I'll do it in the console. Now it's right there. You shouldn't do this though. You should just start the server up or restart it with the scripts. This really isn't good practice, but I'm just doing this for a video, so bear with me. Oh, hold on. We have a syntax error. Line 9. I forgot. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so basically I messed up there. You have to set the string back equal to itself. You can't like do that. You have to set it equal to itself. Now that'll work if we put that back in there now. Apologies on that. So now we put this in here. Okay, so now if we run /discord, I tested it before because I want to make sure it worked. So there's our message. It brings it back to us. Only we can see that. No one else can see that. Now if we do /announce, this is our test announcement. It announces it in chat as you see. So basically now everyone can see that. That goes to everybody. So these are our two commands and they work completely well. You can run this as many times as you want. Announce this is a test and announce it. That'll be sent to everybody basically. But yeah, that's how you make a command in basically 5M scripts. That's really all you have to do. It's really not that hard. Also, another thing is you don't have to put these in a server.lua. You could have this in a client.lua too. It just all depends on what you're making the script for. Because certain events, like certain functions for a citizen, you can't run on the server side. You have to run it on the client side, which would mean you have to run it in a client.lua. But for this video, it really didn't make sense to make a client.lua because these are just announcement scripts, so it's a lot easier to run them from the server side because you can easily just trigger the client event and then tell like who you want to send it to, which was source. We just wanted to send it to ourselves, but then we also wanted to send it to everybody, so it's a lot easier to do these on the server side rather than on the client side. But we'll get into like the differences between the client side and the server side for another video, but that's basically how you do commands and the easiest way to do them. So I hope you guys enjoyed, give the video a like, a comment, and I hope you guys can subscribe. I would really appreciate that.